Welcome to People, Places, and Parables, highlighting people and the positive effect they have in our community.
Well, hello, this is Chris. Be positive is my blood type, and that's also my motto for People, Places, and Parables, the positive podcast with positive people. I'm very fortunate today to have Melanie Pomroy. She is the Senior Hospice Care Consultant with Gentiva Hospice, and that's a really, really serious thing I know from when my father was near end of life. I sat in on a session, and it was the most intimate and caring thing, and I'm thinking, wow, people that do your work, that must take a lot of heart and a lot of courage, because a lot of people, myself included, when we know somebody's passing away, guess what? Oh, there's something else I can do right now? Let somebody. It's awful to feel that way. I know my brothers, we had different father, and one of them I remember saying how honored he was to be there when his biological father passed. But so how long have you been involved in this, Melanie?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I have been a nurse for over 20 years. I worked in home health care for almost 15, and then about 2.5 years ago, I made the transition to hospice. I was seeing a lot of hospice type patients in the home care setting, and there's just so much more available for people with true hospice. So I was glad to join the team.
So it's kind of like a calling, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I'm always amazed by how many people say to me that they can tell how passionate I am about the job or something, just because I don't see it in myself that way. I just see that I'm just doing my job, and I do love my job, so that's good.
And if you love the work you do, you never work another day in your life. It's really true. And in terms of Gentiva, I know there's a lot of just different hospice programs. So as far as different locations and so forth, what are you looking at in terms of Gentiva, in terms of staff in the state of Maine or in this part of the state?
Gentiva has 3 branches in the state of Maine. We have one in southern Maine, in the Portland area. Then we have another branch in the Augusta area, and our branch that is located in Brewer. We all cover about a 50-mile perimeter around each location hub. So we've got a good percentage of the state covered. We're not in every area, but we're in most.
That's excellent. And from what I understand, when we talked prior to this recording, that the hospice care is available to a lot of people. Is it through Medicare?
Yep, Medicare is the primary, I would say, insurance that we use, and how we kind of speak about what's covered with hospice is basically how Medicare covers it.
And I was going to say, with a lot of people, from experience from both my father and my mother, and as a matter of fact, both of my mother-in-law and father-in-law, we were all really close, and getting to see them near the end of life. What are some of the challenges that you run into dealing with the process? Not necessarily the person or the family, but obviously a lot of things are going on in Washington now where a lot of great programs are being defunded or cut off at the knees and so forth. Are you seeing effects from that at all?
We have not seen effects from that. Honestly, our biggest problem that we have is people's misconceptions that they have about hospice. People think that you have to be actively dying to have the benefits of hospice, and that's just not true. You have to have a chronic condition that, if that condition took its natural course of progression, that there's a possibility that you pass away in the next 6 months, and that you're shifting your focus from curative treatments for your disease process to more of a symptom management process. And a lot of people hear hospice and they think giving up, and it's not giving up, it's living for today without thinking about the consequence for tomorrow.
Gotcha.
The reality is every single one of us is going to pass away one day. Death was never meant to be cured. So how can we embrace that and help make what can be one of the most challenging times for patients and families? How can we help make that a little bit smoother, a little bit easier for each family?
And in terms of hospice volunteers and staff, if somebody is out there and they're in nursing school right now and it's a real calling for them, what's the process to get involved? Is there a program where they can mentor with somebody? How does that work?
Sure. Most nurses have to kind of pay their dues for a couple of years in the hospital. That's really where you get a lot of your skill set from. But it's not an absolute requirement. Everybody takes a different path. But typically when somebody expresses an interest in being a hospice nurse and seeing what it's like to be a hospice nurse, we welcome that new nurse or that nursing student to come and spend a day with one of our nurses, see what it is that they do, how we help support, and just get a general feel for what it's like to live a day in the life of a hospice nurse.
You talked earlier, obviously families, it's like, for instance, I learned when I worked with adoptive and foster families. I went to a conference, and a country that has very little foster care is Italy, because they have kinship care. They have large families, and there's always somebody that steps in. A lot of times what I've seen when I was in recovery from my heart surgery, and we used to see it with my father-in-law and so forth, so many people are left behind. In other words, they're in a facility, and either the family is outside of the area, so it's difficult to come and see them, or sometimes they just unfortunately avoid families like that. Amazed when I was at Stillwater Healthcare, as the atmosphere there was so positive, and one of the people that I ran into that had Alzheimer's, that was coming up to my next question, what Alzheimer's, and it took me a few days of talking with him. He'd come and visit every day, and he was under the impression that he was still working. And he couldn't understand why he was getting paid, but nobody was giving him work to do. And to me, that's one of the scariest things, dementia and Alzheimer's and Lewy body disease. When you're dealing with a person that has memory and cognitive issues like that, is there different training for the hospice worker to help with that?
Absolutely. There is constant education opportunities for any of our nursing staff, for our social workers and aides and chaplains. There's lots of opportunity for education where we can attend an online class or, take a course locally or reading a book or whatever. And then just going out and seeing it and being with another clinician that is maybe a little bit more versed in how to manage somebody with that disease process and the symptoms and behaviors that come along with that, and just seeing it in real life.
It's phenomenal. And the fact that so many people, Donna Gormley is one of them. She's still in the field where they have a program that helps keep people at home longer.
Yep.
My oldest half-brother came all the way up from South Bristol right before my mother passed to grab a hospital bed to take down so she could spend some time at home. Before my father passed, we had him come over, and the family was trying to keep him from laying down on the couch because after a couple of heart attacks when I was a kid, he always was a type A personality until he had the heart attacks, and he had the whole out-of-body. And one of the things that he started doing when I was a kid after he had his heart attacks, he'd eat a meal, he'd go lay down on the couch and fall asleep, and I'd never seen that before. I must have been maybe 10 or 11 or so. I remember poking him to see if he would be okay. It's not just visiting in the hospital, that if there's an opportunity to have a person be able to go out and do something outside of the facility. You had mentioned something earlier like that, which I think is wonderful. What are some examples of that?
So hospice can be provided wherever a person calls home, whether it's their home that they've been in their whole lives, raised their families in, whether it's an assisted living where they're going and getting some support with meal preparation and medications being given for them. If they're in a long-term care facility, we can see them there. We can also see people in the hospital setting for hospice, but there's some very specific requirements for the hospital setting. But truly, wherever a patient calls home is where hospice is provided. Our goal truly is to help keep the person out of the hospital so that they can pass in the place where they want to be when they pass. Most people don't want to die in the hospital.
Exactly. The other question I had too is interesting. We used to visit my father-in-law. We'd bring in one of our cats or one of our pet rabbits. A couple of years ago, one of the Welcome to Housing volunteers that I've worked with, who was also a recipient, there's a lady who had moved out of her home. She was living in a hotel, and a mutual friend contacted me, and her last wish was to pet a cat. And my wife and I have 6 Maine Coon cats, but we, other than taking them to the vet, they don't go much any place. But this friend of ours, we went over to the hotel in Brewer with the cat, and it was amazing to see the reaction of this woman who was very close to passing, to be able to hold and pet the cat. I mean, it's just so many things, actions going back out into the community. And I know, for instance, in some of the facilities in the state of Maine, they do training of dogs. So many of these things have been done for eons, and it's so funny they're coming back around. It's like mentorship. What are some of the more unique things that you've seen that have had a positive impact on a hospice patient?
You know, when we meet with a patient, we ask a lot of questions about their history, about who they are as a person, not just about who they are in their illness. And one of the things we'll ask is there something you still have left to do? Is there something that was on your bucket list that you want to do? And we try to make that happen. Sometimes it's as simple as something that just popped into my head as I met with a gentleman a few years ago that turned rocks, and he polished them up, and he had a whole setup in his home, and that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be strong enough to be able to go out and polish rocks. Let's do that. Let's make sure that you can do the things that you want to do in the day, right? So
that's wonderful.
Yeah. We had somebody that wanted to go to the ocean one more time. Helped to facilitate making that happen. Get your toes in the sand and smell the salt water. Let's do it. We really are about living. How can we give you the best today without thinking about the consequence for tomorrow?
It's like the make a wish. I had the honor of meeting the parents and never met the son. There was a young boy, I believe, in the Winterport area who had cystic fibrosis. He had a wish made, and I'm not sure if he's still around or not, because from what I understand, cystic fibrosis is a death sentence eventually. But I met his parents. I dropped off some special Hot Wheels for an auction. But this young man was doing fundraising every year for Make-A-Wish. And I wish more people out there would see some of the young people in what they do. And that's the other question I have with hospice. I know from working with Beth Hoxie with adoptive and foster families of Maine, for instance, learning about all the studies and the interest there has been, how a relationship between a grandparent and a grandchild is so tight and so meaningful that the gap that between the parent and the child, normally there might be tension or whatever. When it's between a grandchild and a grandparent, a lot of times it's really strong. Do you see, on occasion, younger people coming in to be with their grandmother, grandfather, uncle, or aunt?
Yeah, we really have all family members, whether they're true blood relation or somebody that's just been really close to the family for a long time. We try to surround people with their supports, with the people that are important to them. But thinking about the younger generation, there's one of the nursing facilities that I go into. They have some high school girls that come in a couple times a month and paint fingernails for the ladies there, so it's just a nice connection. It is that opportunity for those ladies that maybe don't have a lot of visitors to see those cute little young girls coming in and pampering them, and it's just a really nice thing for both. The kids are learning, how to be respectful and hear the stories of these people, and then the residents of the facility themselves are just getting the benefit of seeing that young girl come in and having some interaction with them.
That's fabulous. It's funny. One of the things I've always marveled at, I was very lucky growing up in that I always learned to respect elders and learn from them. And one of my favorite anecdotes is when my wife and I were renting down at the terraces, I used to walk up to the mailbox every day, and there's always a gentleman there. How are you doing? And he'd always say, I can't complain. I can't complain. Well, one day he looked at me and he told me why. He was in the Battle of Midway during World War II, and my jaw basically hit the pavement. I've seen documentaries on that, and he said, I made a deal with God that if I got out of this alive, I would never, ever complain again. I had a great volunteer named Chet Kolb. He followed me from volunteering at the Symphony to volunteering at Adoptive and Foster Families of Maine. He was a great friend, and one day he said, I got called out of the classroom in New Jersey when I was a kid, and I grew up in New Jersey, so I said, okay, I'll bite. Why? Oh, we were all called outside to watch the Hindenburg go over.
Okay.
I had a guy that I used to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with Kiwanis when we go to the soup kitchen, and it wasn't until he passed away that I learned he was in the Battle of the Bulge. I mean, there is just such a phenomenal thing out there. One of the programs I hope to get on this podcast at some point is Coal Land Transportation Museum. If you've ever gone over there, it's a fabulous museum to begin with. But one of the things that they do is they have young people come in and talk to some of the veterans. And that inclusion and learning about history from people that lived it is incredible. What are some of the things you're seeing on the horizon for hospice care in general and for Gentiva in general? Is there anything new coming, or some of the things to make your life easier?
Something that we're really excited about is we are trying to get a pet therapy program off the ground. It's just, the logistics of coordinating and, getting everything all signed, sealed, and delivered and everything. But we are in the process of doing that because, as you said, those pets make a huge difference to people. We have connections with folks that do have therapy dogs that can come and bring their dog for somebody to, pet and love on a little bit. And there is something about those pets that are just medicine.
It's interesting, too, because the Humane Society, Susan Prendergast, I don't know if she still goes by that, or Susan Bell, she heads up the Bangor Humane Society. That is a gift to this community, especially now that they don't practice euthanasia. My wife and I have done several rescue runs. We had a first one we did was a mother cat and her kitten all the way from Tennessee all the way up to Holton to go to New Brunswick. What's fascinating too with animals, the different therapies now. Years ago in Kiwanis, I talked to a couple that trained dogs to tether to small children that had autism, because every once in a while they would get an impulse to just bolt, and you could be walking along in the city street and all of a sudden they decide they're going to run across the street to go see something, and they'd be anchored to the dog. What baffles me, and if I ever have a chance to talk to him in person again, I would love to ask Stephen King. There's a book he wrote called The Talisman. And long story short, it was a young man and a man who was a werewolf traveling between two different planes of existence. And they were hitchhiking, and the guy that was the werewolf was getting all nervous to the point where he was really irritating the other character. And they get out of the car, they get dropped off, and the other guy goes, "What is your problem? Why are you so wound up?" And the guy who's a werewolf looked at me and says, "You didn't smell it, did you? That man's dying." And if I'm not mistaken, this was before they announced that dogs, canines, can actually sense, and I'm assuming it's a change in respiration, they can sense cancer. And it's like, wow, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, some of the things that those dogs can be trained to do is pretty amazing.
It's phenomenal. So in terms of where Gentiva serves now, you mentioned the three different areas. I don't know, do you do, from this area, the Penobscot County area, do you do other counties outside of here, like Waldo or
Yep.
Aroostook?
We're in Waldo, Somerset, Piscataquis. Am I forgetting one?
Okay.
We go over to like Ellsworth, Trenton area, up to the Lincoln area, over Dover, Dexter, into like Sangerville, and down to Pittsfield for the brewer office. It's kind of the circle. We're over in Belfast, Searsport, Penobscot, down that way.
And that brings up another question. And all the time I've done nonprofit work, including American Cancer, we used to have something called Road to Recovery. And it was amazing. We could get somebody to their cancer treatment in Bangor from Millinocket without a problem. Trying to get somebody, say, from Cape Heart over to the hospital could be a challenge. What are some of the challenges you and your folks run into in terms of transportation? Is that something that's funded or unfunded? How does that all work?
So hospice doesn't provide transportation, but that's one of the roles of our social workers, is helping to navigate that for folks that don't have transportation. Does somebody just need a regular ride, a regular car? Do they need a wheelchair van? Do they need to go by ambulance because they need to lay down? And we'll help navigate all that and figure out a way to get somebody from point A to point B.
And this is a big state, and the amount of area is incredible. When I was in real estate for 21 years, you'd run into people that wanted to be off the grid. And I would always look at them and go, okay, there's three things you want to be near. You want to be near a hospital. You want to be near a grocery store. You can afford groceries. And you also want to find somebody that can fix your car. I mean, it's nice to be a little bit off the grid, but I know that's one of the challenges. In terms of other counties in the state, I know Aroostook County, I don't know if you cover all the way up that way or if there's other programs that cover up there.
We don't go that far. There are a couple of agencies that go into different pockets of that territory. Northern Light and Andwell, I believe, are both up that way.
Gotcha. And it's interesting now, I'm really proud to be living in Maine. The resourcefulness. One of the guests that we had on here was Jason Parent. And Jason heads up the Aroostook County Action Program, which now oversees Hancock and Washington counties. I know that Washington County was having really a difficult time financially. I'm not sure about Hancock County, Ellsworth, and so forth. But the collaboration I've seen in the last decade or so is amazing. Having worked at a couple of national organizations like the March of Dimes and American Cancer, for years it was like, oh, you don't collaborate, you don't do anything. A good example is the March of Dimes had a staff person somewhere years ago in another part of the country who went over to multiple sclerosis, which is an incredibly important cause in this state because there's such a high incidence of it. And what they ended up doing is putting their walk event before the March of Dimes one, which is kind of too bad. But nowadays there's a lot of collaboration. For instance, there's Penobscot County Cares. I'll have to see if you would like to get on the list for that. It's all the nonprofits that want to join in, and even some from outside the area of Penobscot County, basically working together. And that came together when the American Rescue Plan Act money came into the city of Bangor and Penobscot County. And it amazes me how many small nonprofits there are out there. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and that could not be more true with nonprofits. So just out of curiosity, what are some of the resources that you work with now, and what are maybe some of the resources you'd like to find and connect with that would make your work a lot easier?
Yeah. I just had the privilege of helping somebody that is truly homebound get hooked up to get some labs done. And one of the things that I've encountered is that I'm able to cover in small towns. So I cover in Piscataquis County. So I'm in Dover and Guilford and Sangerville and, up that way a lot. And I had, somebody that was fairly rural and really truly homebound. And I was able to coordinate with a local facility to be able to get her labs done. And there's something, Maine is one big small town, really, and there's something to be said for the neighbor helping neighbor, and not all of them are nonprofit, I mean, some of that is just a different tax filing, but the heart is in the right place. So the help can be out there. You got to find it.
The sense of community is phenomenal. I know, for instance, the Setamoka School, which is Sebec, Dover, Monson, and Charleston years ago, they were having kids in the morning coming in that were really disruptive. And instead of just sending them to detention, they looked into it. And as it turned out, these kids were not getting a decent meal before they got on the bus, or any meal at all. So their blood sugars were off, their electrolytes were messed up, and so forth. Piscataquis County is a really good example of people working together. The recent fire down at Robbins Lumber Mill in Searsmont is a good testament to people joining together and helping each other. So we've got a couple more minutes left. If somebody is out there listening or watching this, and they have questions about hospice, what would you say to them? What would be the best route? I mean, obviously you can look on the internet, but what are some of the things to look for, and what are some of the things to ask yourself if you're looking into it?
Yep. I think it's really important to remember that hospice is not giving up, right? And I said it before, death was not meant to be cured. Every single one of us is going to pass away. And you don't have to be actively dying to use your hospice benefit. I'll just go into that a little bit. We, as we're working, the government takes money out of our paycheck and it goes into a Medicare fund. And part of that fund pays for hospice. So hospice isn't free care or charity care. It's an insurance policy that people have paid for. And when they're eligible to use it, they should consider themselves worthy to be able to use the benefit that they have paid into. That benefit covers a nurse, an aide, a social worker, a chaplain, a volunteer. It covers any equipment that you might need, a hospital bed, a bedside commode, a wheelchair, a walker, a shower chair, a cane, any of those things. We can cover incontinence supplies. Those are very expensive for people. Wound supplies, if the wound is related to their hospice diagnosis. Again, I said I cover in Piscataquis County. Piscataquis County is the oldest county in the state per capita and rivals Somerset and Washington for which one is the poorest. So,
wow, I did not realize that.
So being able to link people up to the resource that they've already paid for, and then it's just out there waiting for them to use. Hospice is a benefit that is available for 180 days at a time. So it's 6 months at a time.
Wow.
And as long as you meet that criteria, right, you have the diagnosis, and that you're switching your focus from curative to symptom management. When that is your goal, then every 6 months, as long as you still meet eligibility, you continue to be able to have the hospice benefit. On average, people are on hospice for 18 days. And that is truly because we have some people that come on hospice who wait so long that they pass away within the first day of being on hospice.
Wow.
We've had people that have been on hospice for upwards of 3 years because they've continued to decline, and they still meet eligibility. Something to think about is most people have about $37,000 that they've paid into for their hospice benefit. Hospice charges $205-ish a day, and if the average length of stay is 18 days, that's just under $3,700 that you've tapped into for that money. You've left $33,000 of money that was available for your care on the table.
Wow.
So it's not just for somebody who's actively dying. It's really to have quality of life.
I was just about to say that, because it that's what it comes down to. That's what's so nice about this country, is we do focus on that. I want to thank you for being here today, and this was our take 3, so this worked out really well. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening, and if you have more information or want more information, to reach out to Melanie or to reach out to Gentiva. Thank you again for joining me, and if you can hold on for just 1 second, we're going to watch this upload really quickly. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you.